Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today was an interesting day with the new 2020 Corvette. Last week we got a whole bunch of reviews that came out. All the different major magazines and media outlets came out with their reviews of the car, and there were two distinct groups of reviews. And so getting into the details of each one of the reviews it's kind of weird because they kind of all came with the same conclusion. And they're two different groups though. So one group was a group of automotive journalists, not the major magazines, that all went to what seems to be suburban Detroit and all got together and all drove kind of the same car, the same couple of cars through suburban Detroit. What they did was just some various performance driving around, in the country and things like that. Very rarely did they actually do something that was really testing the limits of the car. A couple of them did test the launch control, but that's maybe about it. We didn't really get any track testing out of those guys. So most of their reviews were extremely positive, extremely saying how this was just a fantastic car in every way. They were more what I would call editorial type reviews. It's something you would see in maybe like a newspaper or something like that, where they're just talking about kind of the unique features of the car, not talking about the extreme testing and the extreme capabilities of this car. So the other group of reviews that came out last week were from some of the big magazines. So we saw MotorTrend, Car and Driver, Road and Track, Automobile, a few of the major magazines. So these major magazines all went out to an actual racetrack and they took the cars out there and really pushed the limits. If you haven't already seen all those reviews, definitely go to each one of those websites and find those reviews that were posted about the car. It's really interesting to see how different those reviews were from these editorial reviews that were from suburban Detroit. All of those reviews, again, were just about how great and cool and positive the car was. Almost nothing critical about it, except for maybe like some fit and finish and the interior stuff. But the reviews from the major magazines were all consistent as well, but they delivered a very different message. All of them talked about how powerful the car was, how surprisingly smooth and quiet it was, but how when pushed at its limits, it didn't perform to the level that they expected. They all talked about its lack of ability in under braking. They all talked about its massive issues with understeer. They all talked about how it potentially has quite a few issues that the average guy driving through suburban Detroit or out in the back roads isn't going to know. You're only going to know if you're actually taking it to the track and testing it and pushing its limits. So I thought that was really interesting that you had two different camps, both of them with consistent messages, but those consistent messages were different. So it's interesting. So if you're a weekend warrior type of just go out on the back roads type of person, maybe you're going to love reading the reviews from the editorial guys and the newspaper guys. If you're someone who really wants to drive the car and buy the car for its performance capability, go check out those reviews from the major magazine. Also, go check out the video from Matt Farah, the Smoking Tire. I think he did a test with Road and Track where he drove the car around the racetrack for a couple of laps, and you really got to hear what he was saying and what he was thinking and how he was reacting as he was driving the car. I thought it was extremely unique, the video that he made, because he had kind of a preface to the video that he started with about, hey, watch this, but then listen to me at the end, which was kind of an interesting way to make his video. The video was fantastic. Listen, he's not a race car driver, people, but it was still a great video. You really got to see what it's like to drive this, or what it's really like for someone to drive this car around a racetrack. I thought that was a really, really great video. And then he cuts back and he's talking in front of the camera after reviewing the footage. And he said that he drove the car for about a week or a few days after this racetrack excursion. And he talked about how the car in that setting performed actually much worse, which is extremely unique because while driving the car on the racetrack, he said nothing but fantastic things. He mentioned a little bit on the steering, but nothing too critical. But then on the driving around the city, he talked about how it wasn't as great, how the the gear ratios and things like that just didn't sit well with it. And I thought that was really different, but I thought it was a very raw way of reviewing the car. So I thought it was really good. So today we got some very interesting news from our friends at MotorTrend. They had what I believe is the same car they did their testing in, which they said was VIN number 10. And today they decided to do a dyno test on this car. And I think it surprised just about everybody. So the first dyno test was done by MotorTrend, and the first pull they did in 5th gear came back at a ridiculous 558 horsepower and 515 pound-feet of torque at the wheels. And this is for a stock 2020 C8 Corvette. That's crazy. I mean, great if it's real, probably not real. That's what I first thought when I first read that. And sure enough, as I read more into the article, that's exactly what they thought when they first read that. So they tested it again, got similar results, tested again, got similar results. Something's not right. They actually, as if I'm believing the article as written, they went out of their way to really figure out if these numbers were real and how can they retest it to see how real they are. Because that number equates to about 650 horsepower at the flywheel, 150-ish more than what they advertise at 495. And this is 495. This horsepower is an SAE certified number. It's not just something they just made up. So then MotorTrend, of course, is then investigating the authenticity of the SAE test and how is their test different from what our test is. So they retested once they learned more about the gear ratios, and I think they put it into 6th gear, and they got what they felt was the actual number. After 6 pulls, they finally determined, hey, this is at least the final number we're going to determine it is.
So which of these numbers is true? The 495 that Chevrolet is claiming, or the 650 that we saw?
I'm leaning more towards the 650 that we saw, but also to make sure that the car that we got wasn't a ringer. We're going to be following up with this story in the future.
Absolutely insane numbers. I think we're all kind of scratching our head on the authenticity of these numbers. I know MotorTrend is, reading the rest of this article, and it kind of makes you wonder, are all the cars going to be this powerful, or is this just a ringer that they sent out for the magazines?
So once Corvette owners get their cars, we're going to ask them to come into the same dyno. We'll pay for the dyno runs, and we'll see if their car is making the same amount of horsepower and torque numbers that our Corvette was making.
If it's a ringer they sent out for the magazines, that's extremely disappointing, because we've all wondered ever since these numbers came out when they revealed the car in Tustin that this car will do 0 to 60 in 2.9. All the magazines, the major magazines, all tested it and did 0 to 60 in 2.8. That, again, a very consistent number throughout the reviews that you saw last week, 2.8. And the base C7 is like 3.9. How can you shave a full second off? And you can if you gain that much horsepower, that much torque. So I'm not sure if this is a real thing or not. I think that's what everyone's questioning. I'm just going to hope that it is, and we all just magically got this boost, but we'll see. Anyway, I wanted to just show you guys this news that came out today about the C8. I thought it was fantastic and fascinating and just very, very much worth talking about. Please give me a like and give me a subscribe, and we'll share more information on the C8 as it continues to come out. See you next time. Adios.